I mean, people don't even really even seem to put their guard up after a certain amount of time when it comes to mental health, because they know that they can be vocal about that conversation. And by doing that, it really helps us start to find results. I mean, not really just by, somebody pointing them out, but more so seeing them in ourselves by expressing, what it is that's getting at us, or, what experience it reminds us of, or, what somebody might call a trigger. Getting to the root of it, and again, kind of confronting it in a way that's never been confronted before.
You're listening to Relish This, the Purpose Marketing Podcast. Here's your host, Stu Swineford.
Hey everybody, Stu here. My guest today is Drew Robertson. He's the founder of Mattersville Vets. Mattersville Vets is a really great organization that provides veterans with sustainable housing and support to reintegrate into civilian society and thrive. And they do this through a variety of programs that are really neat. And they've created these tiny home communities, and they integrate companion animals to help vets really cope with PTSD. And these companion animals are actually rescued wolves. So it's just this really cool program where they also have counseling and job training so that these vets coming out of military service can kind of have a way to get back into civilian society. It's really cool. And we had a great conversation that ranged on a variety of topics, but I think one of the biggest takeaways is this idea of celebrating success. And as organization leaders and entrepreneurs, we tend to move the goalpost. And so we had this conversation about how success breeds success, and really looking at how far you've come and leveraging that to get you to the next tier is just a super valuable tool to have in your kit as a foundation leader or a leader of an organization. I had a great time talking with Drew. I hope you guys enjoy the show. Here we go. Well, thanks so much for being on the show today. I appreciate it, Drew.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
My pleasure. Are you down in Denver or Arvada?
Yeah, I live in Arvada, yeah.
Arvada. Excellent. Is it snowing down there, or is it just standard December-y weather?
Yeah, just normal December-y, chilly weather.
Gotcha. It's snowing up here. I'm coming to you from Netherlands this afternoon, and a little storm just started rolling through. So we're supposed to get a couple inches out of this, which will be fun.
Yeah, the team out of the property said that they're preparing right now. I occasionally, about once every 3 weeks, will get about 2 days off.
Okay.
Sometimes in a row. It's pretty neat when that happens.
That is pretty neat. Yeah. So you have a couple of things going on. Last we chatted, you had the Mattersville project, and then also the Wolf project, right?
Well, it's all one and the same. A lot of people think that there's a difference between the two projects, but they all run together in the grand design that is our overall plans for Mattersville.
Wow, that sounds really cool. So tell us a little bit about your program and what you're doing. It's a really, really neat stuff.
Yeah, we house veterans who are overcoming PTSD and other symptoms that are coupled with PTSD, TBIs, which bring on multiple other symptoms that can create problems with a person's mental health. And what we do is we address it. I mean, it's one of those programs where we aren't tiptoeing around the facts. I mean, when we know that we have an issue with something, the conversation's there. And what happens here is by that conversation being on the table, all the normal reservations about talking about what's going on with your mental health don't apply. I mean, people don't even really even seem to put their guard up after a certain amount of time when it comes to mental health, because they know that they can be vocal about that conversation. And by doing that, it really helps us start to find results. I mean, not really just by, somebody pointing them out, but more so seeing them in ourselves by expressing, what it is that's getting at us, or, what experience it reminds us of, or, what somebody might call a trigger. Getting to the root of it, and again, kind of confronting it in a way that's never been confronted before. And a lot of that has to do with finding and teaching and learning positive coping skills, and things to kind of decompress after those confrontations. And that's where the wolves come into play. These wolves, we and wolf dogs. We have them as therapy animals. I mean, these animals are literally there supporting veterans in their time that, they might not have found the way to express what's going on with them, or a way to vocalize it. And, then you see them working with the animals, and, just kind of that time that they have to literally empty that out of their mind for a short period of time and focus on the situation and what's going on around them, because they're in there with an apex predator. So,
Right.
So they're, you watch that kind of decompression happen almost instantly, because, it is our natural instinct to keep ourselves guarded when we're around large animals that could be vicious, even though ours are, to me, a bunch of big babies. But again, the results have just been staggering. I mean, we're saving lives, whether it's through the companionship and human connection that's created here, or the or the animals, or both. And it's really just been an incredible thing to kind of watch this develop, because the original plan was with canines, not necessarily wolf dogs, and the way it evolved to wolf dogs just kind of became an incredible thing, and a learning experience even for me, because each one has such a unique personality, and so does each individual, right? Each person that might be going through whatever, and whatever kind of trauma, and watching these relationships develop between certain animals and certain people. To me, it's kind of like a reality show, because I'm just like, that makes sense, because for some of the animals and some of the veterans, or some of the civilian volunteer staff that have undergone trauma of some kind in their life, or loss, or or whatever it be, you just kind of see them with an animal, which might have a backstory very similar, because these animals also take out of abusive situations, and it's a lot of them were neglected or abused or beaten, and left for dead, and rescued in one way or another, either by our team or by our predecessors at the Rocky Mountain Wildlife Foundation.
Wow, that's great. It's a really cool thing that you brought those two groups together that have such similar stories in a way. How many people have come through your program at this point?
Right now we're and it depends on what you consider officially. 4 or 5 this year. Officially, we helped a few other people while we were in development that over time wouldn't have been a long-term fit anyways, because they had different views of community.
Okay. Right.
But so every story hasn't been a success story. That it's that way with staff either. I mean, we've had to roll through a couple staff members, some because like I said, being in a mental health organization, it attracts people that want to help, who have gone through similar experiences. So sometimes even the staff that want to put in the most help have undergone the most trauma. So we reach out to them and bring them in to the best of our ability. But sometimes life catches up with them as well, and they need to we need to part ways for a short time.
Sure.
Which sometimes they're able to come back. Sometimes on the way out, people have self-sabotage to the point where they they wouldn't be able to come back, but that's only happened like one time, once or
Okay.
twice.
Gotcha.
But and that tends to happen again with mental health. It's tough because even in those moments we want to help, but you can't always, because some people are gonna, sometimes they're just gonna take their ball and go home. You know what I mean?
Right.
They don't mind if it's gonna affect everybody else because that's the place that they're at right then. And, hopefully they'll circle back to a healthy place where they're able to give something else a try.
Well, it sounds like you're touching a lot of lives in a lot of different ways, and I think it's kind of an amazing juggle. How many animals do you have at the facility at this point?
17.
Okay.
Yeah, we're actually getting ready to transition because one of the we're starting to finally face our first bit of bureaucratic pushback by way of a zoning official
Mm-hmm.
who's really just going out of his way to try and poke holes and interpret zoning, whatever's beneficial to create issue for us.
Okay.
A lot of stuff because it is unclear in a lot of portions of their zoning that on where it actually stands, because the same exact county, their zoning and their building codes are conflicting information.
Okay, gotcha. Because you have a central existing building with some kind of tiny homes on the property. Is that right?
So we have a house on the property, a 3-bedroom house, and then we've people, our volunteers and staff the veterans live in the house. The volunteers and staff will show up, and we do have a tiny home in construction.
Okay.
And it's known as the Alpha House, A, because it's the first house, B, it's for directors, and
Right.
C, it's going to be the center point, or the sort of the landing point of our next property, by way of we built this home to have a fully sustainable energy system that's not only able to power the tiny home itself, but it'll be able to power the entire community. We're building it with panels and extensions, where basically once we pull up into our next community, after putting our additional 35 panels on ground mounts and connecting to the solar awnings and solar roof that's being built onto this tiny home, there'll be enough power to power anywhere between 5 and 10 tiny homes full time on renewables.
That's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
That's really cool. So you're bringing a lot of things together.
Yeah, well, when we were in development and writing the program, I went to solar school and went on to some advanced courses to focus on battery bank and everything else, battery bank technologies. And I searched for property for the property that we're getting in, or that we have, that we now own in Hartselle. It's 35 acres, and we're getting ready to go into planned development on that property as we speak, because that property was kind of always meant to be what is going to be our actual hub, a community center, everything else, where our Sedalia property will still serve as another property. But if the county is going to keep pushing us to limit the animals, then we won't be able to do, have as many therapy animals there, but more so, just enough to run, a more intimate, smaller program, because they're literally giving us so much pushback. I'm just shocked. I mean, again, we're starting to look into legal at this point, because in some ways he's going out of his way to enforce rules on us that don't seem to apply to everybody else.
Interesting.
Yeah. But in Park County, on the other hand, the entire community seems extremely receptive. And not only that, that's where the animals came out of in the first place. We got them from Rocky Mountain Wildlife Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
They pre-existed in Park County, so we're looking forward to a better relationship with the animals there. But not only that, being able to, with it being a more flat property, being able to make a more larger facility, a larger running area for the animals. We already have it designed out to increase the yards to where, I mean, these guys are going to be able to run around like crazy for a good portion of every single day, and yeah, it's much different than the extreme slopes and hills that we have in Sedalia, anyways.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's kind of a
Gotcha.
good thing. It annoys me that he's pushing us, but at the same time, again, we had plans for Hartzell, and it's like it would be cool if we didn't have to be pushed along as we're already making plans and preparations, anyways. That'll make them happy, anyways.
Right.
The crazy thing is that they're giving us so much. He's giving us so much push when there were squatters on this property before us for 6 years, and we've removed 250,000 pounds of trash from this property in this year since we took it over, of the squatters and everything else. And the squatters had an illegal pit bull fighting ring on that property with 10 pit bulls on the property prior to us. So it's again, that's why it's weird to me that they're giving us pushback, the nonprofit that cleaned up the mess and is doing all the things that they want.
Right.
It's like, dude, cut some slack, give us a break. We'll be out of your hair in no time. Let us finish up doing your job real quick, and we'll be on our way.
Right. And is that work part of your program? Are the veterans in your program helping with the cleanup and that's
yes.
that as well? Okay. That's what I thought.
And it's not just that. I mean, Stu, that is we play everybody to their strong points, and that's volunteers, that is veterans that are in the program, that is, that's even myself. They're always willing to learn new things, but until they're taught, you can't expect everybody to know everything. And when we set up projects, people will come out and they'll learn it, and then they're ready to help build the next project. For instance, we're going to be finishing up the siding for the Alpha House this weekend, and as we get that up, they're going to be learning siding and insulation for the first time.
Right.
Okay. And again, it's a learning experience. But guess what? Because guess whose houses are going to come after the director's house? It's the veterans permanent programs. Right. They're the ones that are getting donated. Dude, we have some really, and I'll tell you about this in a minute. We've got some really cool programs coming up. But they're learning to build their house, because what makes this sustainable and what makes this affordable is that the veterans in the program, they're saving 25% of all of their income that they get, whether it be from disability, from a job that they work, side job, side work, investments, whatever. They're responsible to save 25% of their money for their permanent housing plan. Our plan isn't to take care of them forever, for as long as they need to build a sustainable life, and then be ready to either stay within the community on their own home, or buy a property and have more all the space that they could possibly hope for in the end. But the purpose always being building their home and then building for the person behind them. So people sticking around long enough to help then teach the next person by either building their home or whatever else, so that they can cutting out labor costs. Literally cuts out like 70% of your build. So when a veteran is saving for that 25% for their permanent housing plan, I mean, if they get aggressive with it, really aggressive with it, and say, because they don't have to spend much money in the community, and they're putting away most of their money. I mean, my God, they can buy the materials to build their house in 6 months. And guess what happens? Guess what happens when you own your own house and it's got no bills, and you built it sustainably with and you got a spring well on your property that you bought off grid, and you don't care because you have solar. You have no bills for the rest of your life. Cell phone bill and your internet bill, which I imagine those are two things that people still aren't going to give up, even if they go off grid. I know that I look for satellite connected areas still when I'm shopping property, but the end game is that they have a sustainable life, that they learn how to grow their own nutritious foods, whether through gardening or greenhouse or aeroponics, aquaponics, a field, whatever. Focus on one crop and learn some trading skills and go out and trade with other markets. Make a job out of growing food, even if somebody wanted to take it, go so far. But again, a lot of people are restricted, and especially a lot of our guys and girls in the military, just because they went straight out of high school, a lot of them, and into boot camp, and then they're told what to do for eight plus years in many cases, and then the orders stop coming in again. They're just kind of like, all right, when's the next order coming in, and what am I capable of doing? Well, I was kind of kind of used to a different treatment. I'm not used to having all this freedom of choice to go out and start making choices and plans for myself. So by learning these new skills, you kind of see them start to cling on to different things, and people will take their lives in different directions from there. Just kind of based on what their end hopes are. But you put the opportunity in front of them, you create the opportunity, and it'll kind of develop it in itself. When you take away the fear of the roof over your head, the current roof over your head being taken away from you, when you take that out of the equation, they actually have time to address those symptoms and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, it's just a pathway to a really truly free life. I mean, the American dream, a little house on the prairie with no bills, and
yeah, that's amazing. I love it. So, as you guys, well, I'm sure that you had a lot of challenges this year in 2020, but looking into 2021, what are some of the biggest things that you're needing to accomplish in order to either expand your mission or keep things moving in the right direction?
Volunteers, sponsors, and donors. It's like, I mean, really right now, the development and cost of materials, and right now we're at this like really wonky phase where it's kind of annoying because we've got rezoning fees. Rezoning Park County property is going to be $1,700, and that's just the fee, and that's whether or not it gets approved. Or that we have to redo it, or maybe there's a part that's not liked, and I don't know, maybe there's a reapplication fee, or and it starts to get a little bit costly, and it's harder to raise for those kinds of things because it's something that people can't see or feel or touch or come visit. And we've got to get past that phase so that people can see and feel and touch and come visit. So because moving to this property is going to, moving the tours and having wolf tours at this Park County property, the Hartsville property, that's going to be an amazing thing. I mean, again, I can't wait to show people what we have planned. I mean, it's going to be both incredibly safe, but also incredibly spacious and enriching for the animals. And it's going to make our animal care team's job a hell of a lot easier, because currently it's hiking around our 7 acres, which again has some really, really extreme gravelly slopes, and caring for the animals and hauling their food and meat across the property, and water, and things like that, which they do, work very hard. Every single one of our team members that come and works their shifts, works incredibly hard, but the plans for the new property have simplified literally everything to a point where once we put it up, it's going to be incredibly easier to operate.
Gotcha. So moving, and you own the new property outright at this point, or
we do,
you
through donations.
Okay.
Over our we actually were going to have this property first. We had already started. I had started payments. I started paying for it myself before we even started really getting any supporters, because I was, it was kind of like I was telling people the idea, and I'd never run a nonprofit before. I didn't even know where to start. So, it was just kind of telling people the idea, and then started working some events and some trade shows and stuff like that, booking booths and paying for those out of my pocket as well, and raise the money for the 501c3, and by just telling people the dream, and came a little bit at a time, and then finally, once I could afford the 501c3 and we had it all ready to go, we did it. And then and it was really funny. That was the kind of the first shift. Remember, I told you people can come and go. There were the people that were like, okay, I'm really down for this, as a dream, and pursuing, trying to achieve it. And then it was just like, okay, well, now I got our 501c3. And then it was, now, okay, well, now we need to get a property. So I had, already started purchasing a property, one that I vetted out heavily. And then a lot of the staff kind of just like, okay, like, oh, we have to drive all the way over there to go see the property. I'm like, yeah, it's a couple hours. Like, let's go check out our, the property we're going to be setting up and moving on to. Let's start, preparing. And then, of course, a lot of those gung-ho people fell off. They're just like, wow, that sounds like a lot of work, even just driving out there, So it was kind of saw where that was going to go. And then, we had a nice little refresh of some new blood that came in that was ready for sort of that next level. As we,
Right.
Let's get this property paid off and let's get something built. And then the Sedalia property got thrown at me through a friend who was owning it. So, and then it was like, okay, there's cabins, there's like trash literally covering everything top to bottom. I mean, it was insane. So 7 acres of trash and heavy trash too, like construction trash, just everywhere. And we just went to work, and I just kind of started cleaning. Me and our first COO, Kristen, she was out there ready to clean up, and then people just kind of started jumping in with us as as time went on. Eventually, when we decided to take on the animals, it hit the news, and we had a huge influx for a while. And and then as the work started coming to an end, and or as far as the the trash cleanup and stuff like that, coronavirus started hitting, and what was tremendous progress kind of just like hit a dead end as far as being able to maintain the day-to-day, as well as the upgrades of what we need to do to fix the house and get everything up to code in there, from the squatter abuse. Then it's so it's literally been one thing after another on that property. Again, that's why it's crazy that we're catching so much grief, because I don't know anybody that would have cleaned up that mess, including the county. I mean, it would have taken them months. Like it took us months with people, and and the fact that they want to stand in the way of that. And again, they're not standing in the way of the trash, but they're trying to create obstacles for the organization that's literally like cleaned it up for the better, and is then helping people and animals in the process. It's like
right. So you mentioned the three user groups in terms of your stakeholders, with your volunteers, sponsors, and donors, and then obviously you have your beneficiaries in terms of the the vets that are on the property, as well as or in part of the program, as well as the animal beneficiaries. Right. So when you do you anticipate more challenges with volunteers once you move to Hartselle? Does that complicate things for you?
Not necessarily more challenges with volunteers, as far as getting there or anything like that. I mean, some of the ones that were volunteering at Sedalia won't be able to make it all the way to Hartselle. Like, it'll be an hour and a half in the other direction, in a further direction. It's certainly close enough to where people will still be, our committed group will still be there. And because we have a few that are, basically full time back and forth, 5 to 7 days a week. Sometimes, again, yesterday was my first day off in 3 weeks, because it's been one thing after another, just getting a whole bunch of stuff ready for our strategic planning meeting this weekend to go over our city planning for Hartselle, because
cool.
We're doing a big virtual / in person.
And are there specific types of volunteers that you're seeking? Is it hands-on stuff? Are you looking for legal volunteer pro bono work? What's the mix of that team?
I'm sorry, can you ask the question again?
In terms of your volunteers, what does that team look like? What's the mix of talent that you really need to put together? Either in the short term or in longer term.
So we need some long term with animal care, because we don't like people building relationships with the animals and then bailing on them. It's the commitment with that is 1 day a week. we just ask that everybody comes back one day a week. If you can't make it to your shift, get it filled from one of the other team members. We have a few slots there, and it's gonna. And again, I think there might be a few more once we move over to Hartselle, which will take time as well. But there's still going to be 4 animals at the Sedalia property, anyways. So again, it's kind of splitting up the team, and then the veterans that are living there will still be there as well to help tend to those. And as soon as it's up to code and compliant, this property is zoned for another household, which is our intention. Why we've been trying to get it up to code and figure out where everything is. What's funny is we haven't done anything that wasn't already there, except we fixed it or put it up to code. So again, it's just another reason why it's weird that they brought us. But so again, volunteers though, general volunteers, builders, animal care. Counselors that are any mental health counselors that especially anybody that's specific around PTSD, because we do need more peer mentors and more people getting involved in that, because once we grow and start expanding into Hartselle, we'll have more veterans, and we do have a very specific layout that we have for our mental health support, which is it's basically a layered support system where everybody's got multiple peer mentors, and they're also the veterans themselves are also peer mentors for other people on the same property. Kind of like a battle buddy scenario, but somebody that's within the community with you, so that they're always able to just kind of check up if needed, and if there's ever any mental health concerns, that they're able to be there to support them.
And are the counselors on site? They're living on site as well?
No,
not necessarily.
Just accessible. There's so for these further off grid communities, we consider these more of the low risk communities until there's a certain amount of people, or until we can bring counselors on site that are able to stay on site. Once we have the accommodations for something like that, that is something that we will want to add. But again, stepping stones right now, is property one proved that we could do a sustainable model, which we're able to pretty simply, and then the sustainable houses, and then it was just again making sure that that the community setting worked, which it's working amazingly, because again the bonding and human connections and people,
That's great. So those are kind of the 3 main buckets of volunteers that you're seeking.
Yep.
And then in terms of sponsors, is this construction material sponsors, equipment? What's your sponsorship program typically looking like, or is it even grocery stores donating meat or something like that?
So we've got some grocery stores that do donate the meat for the wolves and wolf dogs. Actually, that's one of the only things that we have zero problems with. Wheat Ridge Poultry and Meats, which does the processing. They're one of our sponsors as far as bones and meat, and they are just absolutely amazing, because they do wild game processing. So so these animals, our animals, are getting their natural diet thanks to them, which is deer and deer.
That's great.
So and then construction materials, absolutely. Like I could, there's almost like, if somebody was to reach out, there's it always depends on timing, right? There's like no one thing that we need an extraordinary amount of materials on, but we're about to start working on one of the veteran tiny homes, and I can definitely put a list together for somebody if they wanted to be involved in the into material donations, because there's a couple rebuilds and conversions that we're going to be doing here in the near future, showing people how to do some different stuff there. Again, some of those things, with different materials would be definitely helpful. So it's not always about money, because sometimes it's about different things,
Well, what I'm trying to get to is maybe mechanisms by which you can help get in front of some of these people a little bit more effectively.
Right.
particularly in this potential sponsorship opportunities. And one of the things I'm thinking is really looking at kind of a coordinated LinkedIn campaign where you are reaching out to some of the major or even minor construction firms in the area that might be interested in helping out just with, most construction projects have, not only scraps, but also kind of materials that were over purchased, on purpose, right, that they didn't need to tap into. And so leveraging relationships that you could build within that community to try and be a repository for that, right, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That is helpful. And right now we have a couple promotions going on with some of our local partners. Westera Credit Union is helping us. Elemental Vapor Bar, and a couple other different storefront locations. Westera Credit Union having multiple stores, but we're doing a Secret Santa for the Homeless drop right now, okay, where people are dropping off some actual nice gifts, again, like some different things that could be useful outside of the typical cosmetic bag that they receive out on the streets, right, as opposed to the 30th toothbrush being handed to somebody where, I'm hoping to bring them some really nice gifts like headphones or nice wool hats, things that are really going to make a difference in their day and keeping them warm through this,
Yeah, we're definitely going into that season. Yeah. How are you reaching out for donors, and what are your goals there? What kind of money do you need to raise?
Which project? What's funny is for the animal care, it's actually very cheap to build new pens out there because we do the labor ourselves. We're going to be able to build the pens for about $4 or $5 grand. That's for all of them to, again, these huge yards that I was talking about. And then and that's with no climb horse fence. I love it because we've actually never had escapes from this type of fence that wasn't from, which these guys are escape artists. They always come running right up to us, like wagging their tail or whatever, but they're definitely escape artists. But the community center for Hartselle, I have that estimated. I think it's at $650,000.
Okay,
and that's not only going to house many people and kind of be the reception center of where veterans come into the program before they get assigned a home, but it's also it's going to be the main community center. It's known as the Hansen House. Named after my best friend, who I started writing this whole program for. And that's going to have, fully functional kitchens, with everything, things that you might not have in the plus size in a tiny home, right? Everything in the tiny homes are going to be shrunk down. So to cook for a community at times and, support a community if there was ever a crazy time, or to be able to do any kind of disaster relief where we take in refugees from anywhere, fires, for instance. The Hansen House would be a sustainable community fixture that would be able to support things like that as well. Part of the program that I have written for later on as well would be, when you have a team of veterans that have tiny homes and fully sustainable lives, and they're on, and then a set of tiny homes on wheels, some kind of disaster in our country happened, we're able to dispatch support that has reasonable accommodations while they're supporting other communities.
Right. I mean, you could mobilize those tiny homes if they are on trailers to other locations as needed.
Yep.
So how much of a dent have you made in this? I mean, those two items came to about 655. So, let's round it up to say $700K.
We were finishing up the architecture. We haven't started raising for those items yet. We want to put everything into city planning and make sure that it's accepted before we start taking funds for something that wouldn't go through, if it wasn't able to go through. Um,
Right.
the community center being the main part, and the rezoning, and it's actually really easy on the rezoning side because literally everybody around us already rezoned to the zoning that we want. So,
Oh, okay, good.
so yeah, it's kind of
And I think you said that was about 1,700 or $2,000 or something
yeah,
to do the
the
rezoning.
rezone's about 1,700. We raised nothing on that yet either. I just found out that that's going to be that cost a couple days ago.
Okay.
And that's just the kind of the tip of the spear, if you will. We've got a lot more to. There'll be a lot more involved. We've got the survey. We've got to get the well and the well permit, because then once we get the well and they do a refresh survey, they're going to be able to tell us how much water we're able to support in a day, how much
Right.
we're moving
Right.
in refresh. Otherwise, if we only get allowed one well and we're trying to put 50 people there, it's not going to
Yeah, it's not going to work so great.
great at all. So again, how do we make it sustainable? And does it need to spread out? I mean, here's the thing that's awesome about this Hartzell property. If we can, if they let us subdivide it into 3 properties, 3 13-acre properties or whatever, and they let us house 8 veterans at the most, because that's all that's reasonable and that's all that makes sense. Great. Let's do another, because that's still, for the price that we paid for the land and the price that it's going to cost to house that many people, still awesome. You can still do the community center as one of the primary residences, or facilities for the operations, whatever. And that's still a success story by way of, we didn't pay much for the land. Actually, when I looked at all the land around us this week, because we were looking for other plots around it because of that thought. We got an incredible deal. I mean, it just made me even happier that I started purchasing it when I did, because it's gone. Let's just say the surrounding area has gone up since then. So now but now we're still looking at another property where I might even buy my own primary residence right next to where we're going to build in Hartzell, so that I don't take up one of the allowed veteran spaces.
Right, gotcha. So here's something to consider, and this is just around storytelling.
Sure.
And so thinking of this as a phased rollout. So phase 1 was to secure the property. Phase 2 is to secure the permits and get the kind of the initial ideas around what this is going to look like eventually. So each of these phases, you build on that. And what each of these does, particularly as you're nailing these milestones without a lot of support, sounds like you've kind of bootstrapped almost all of this. As you're hitting these targets, that enables you to tell a different story that you can fundraise against for that next phase. You have demonstrated success. You have wins here that you can really talk about, and those become the backbone of the next phase of development. The other thing that you might think about or look into is this increased value of the property itself. You secured it at a much lower rate than what things are going for now, which means there's equity built into that. And so that equity then becomes something that you can fundraise against in some ways, or even take out loans against, if that's something that you're interested in looking into. But that's a tangible asset that you're just going to continue to build up in terms of its net value. And so what I think I would encourage you to do is start taking some of those bigger steps and start fundraising for against these future plans and future opportunities. And even if you have to scale back at some point, that's okay, because you're making progress and you're demonstrating success. And so really coming at it from that approach of what is phase 3 going to look like. We're here in phase 1, but we're starting to fundraise against phase 3. Is a viable way to continue to kind of leapfrog and make make those incremental wins work in your favor.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's definitely something that we are just now starting to get a hold of. We're working on a couple different platforms that directs people better to our fundraising as well. Literally just had a meeting about this yesterday. It's kind of funny, but it's like some different roundup campaigns and different things where we're able to get recurring support, even if it's on a micro donation level. We're finding that in a pandemic, that's a lot of people are, because that's kind of what happened since the pandemic, is the bigger support, and by that even just even the foundations that are able to do a couple $1,000s, those just, we don't even see them right now. Like, I mean, we certainly haven't, and maybe it's because they're spread. They might be still donating, but they're spread thin, or maybe they're not donating right now, and just kind of waiting things out and seeing which nonprofits stay afloat, because we've seen quite a few close this year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, what we're hearing a variety of different things, and everything from big donations have dried up, but smaller donations have made up the difference, where more people are coming into play with smaller donations, which is actually like closing the gap. I'm also hearing the exact opposite, that for some organizations the big donations are still rolling in, but smaller donations are drying up a little bit. So what we tend to look for are those opportunities to leverage your whatever assets you have. So look at your mailing list, look at your volunteer list, your donor list, segment all those things out and try and figure out where you can kind of go back to those people who've raised their hands in the past and have demonstrated that they're interested in what you're doing and they're excited about it, and really lean on those people. So this is where we get into kind of this inspire phase of engagement. Thinking about marketing and thinking about all of this as relationship building, and you've worked people through a life cycle in terms of getting them interested, so drawing their attention, creating them or transforming them into connections, and then bonding with those people, so getting them to actually take the next step and invest their time or their resources or their dollars to really be part of that program, and then inspiring them to be a person who really gives out even more by involving their own networks, by really shouting your praises and getting on the bandwagon to create even more awareness. Yeah. And so going back to not to the drawing board necessarily, but going back to that well and looking at what those assets are and how you can leverage those people and their passion for what you're doing to help you reach that next tier. And if that's $700,000 to build out this program there near Hartselle, then that that might be it. If it's $70,000 to kind of get the architecture done and drill a couple wells and get that phase of it done, that's a win, and that's another demonstrated step that you've taken toward this.
That is another thing that we've got the initial architecture, but we do need to find an architect. We were lucky to have the base renderings. It's about 13 pages of renderings done. It was sponsored by a good friend of ours about a year ago, actually. We got this back for Hartselle, and we also have, but it's time to move on to it. As we go into city planning, like I said, it's like an architect, engineer, somebody that's ready to get their hands dirty and help out there too would be helpful. Or like you said, finding somebody that can support that would be amazing.
Yeah, for sure. So I think just getting creative in terms of thinking about each of these kind of stakeholder groups and what you need to do to get out in front of them and get them even more engaged than perhaps they might be right now. I really like the idea that you mentioned of the Roundup program. And one of the things that I think I would encourage you to do is try to come up with partners there that are aligned with some portion of your mission. So whether that is going to, going to lumber store or lumber yards or those types of stores. I know that our local hardware store has a Roundup program for a couple of local charities, and they've done a lot of transactions here during this pandemic, and it's amazing how much revenue they're generating.
It is. Those stores do really good ones too, and we're talking to a pizza place that a really good friend of ours, the owner of Pinelli's in Casara. We're talking about doing a roundup with them, but the ones that we're about to launch actually are going to be right on our website. It's have you ever used Acorns before? Or heard of Acorns before?
I have.
So
yes.
You link your credit card and it rounds up your purchases, every purchase, to the nearest dollar. So what the system that we're getting in now, it's a company, it's a program that they basically do the same thing, except your roundup goes to the charity that you link your card to. So so it rounds up, so our supporters are able to link one card, link all their cards, whatever, and they're literally supporting us through
through purchases they were going to make anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when we start talking about those partnerships and trying to figure out good ways to approach those people, typically what I think would be a good thing for you to consider is to think about kind of the pillars that you're hitting. So you have certainly this big pillar about veterans. You have a big pillar about wolves and animals, and so thinking in that regard. And then you have this other pillar around construction and building, which I think is really interesting because you're teaching those skills to your veterans. There may be another pillar there in terms of the farming. So as you think about those buckets, looking at ways to align your outreach to each of those buckets, where you go after, go do searches on veteran-owned businesses and just go to those people because they're going to be inspired about what you do. So the likelihood that they'll become donors or volunteers even, or do some sort of a roundup program or become a partner is pretty high. And then doing that same exercise with each of these other pillars, it just gives you those targets. If you can get overlap, so if you think about a Venn diagram and find a veteran-owned hardware store, that nails like two of those pillars at once. And so the likelihood that someone there is going to be interested in supporting your program is a lot higher than just necessarily going out after any old kind of business. Right. And so if you can be strategic about that, that'll give you a ranking of those businesses or those people that you want to go after.
Right.
And so you have kind of your first tier that are really high probability, and then your second tier, which are maybe a little bit lower probability, and then third tier. But it at least gives you some marching orders in terms of who to reach out to first, because you're going to have a much higher probability of success.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How does that resonate?
Yeah, I mean, that all makes perfect sense to me. I mean, it's we're just it's been crazy. It's because sometimes you go down certain avenues and certain roads, and everything's about timing, right? And because some stuff we've tried, and it's like, okay, well, was it the right person or was it the wrong time?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just one of those things that it's sometimes easier said than done because especially with the pandemic, it's like some businesses you're calling and they're just like their businesses are turned upside down, and other ones are too busy to talk to you because the pandemic actually increased their business in some way, shape, or form. Right. And it's just interesting. Interesting time to be alive for sure.
Yeah, it certainly is. And so, what I heard out of that little piece that you just shared with me is is there are opportunities to engage both of those groups. And so the first group you mentioned, which are the ones that have been hit pretty hard, most people really do want to give back and they want to help. And if the only thing you're asking for is money, then that only gives them one opportunity to help. And maybe that opportunity is a little shut down right now. So if you can think of other ways, which is either sharing your message across their networks or donating, some stuff that they have laying around that they're not going to use anyway, or volunteering some time. Those are ways that people can still feel connected to this community that you're creating. Now, on the other side of that spectrum, where the people that are too busy right now to really talk with you, and those I would certainly say, well, can we put something on the calendar for next month when I can come in and talk to you for 30 minutes about what we're doing, and really create opportunities to schedule that interaction. So it's not disruptive at all. You're not interrupting what they're doing. You're getting, a future date on their schedule. So then you become the focus of their attention at that period of time. And so, really getting opportunities to kind of book in that time. Or those people are generally more able to just give money, and they want to help, but they don't have time. Money's the thing that they tend to throw. So really great opportunities on both ends of that spectrum.
Right. Yep, and again, that's where the right person comes into play. Is somebody that can identify the right question to ask at the at the right time to the right person. So, again, it's we're always we kind of have a joke around our property. It's a rule, if you will, because everybody's already got such an interesting schedule, being incredibly full with all our projects, that if you come up with an idea and you already don't have time to do it, and nobody else does, you're the one that's stuck doing it, because if everybody has a full plate. But right now we finally have, as far as marketing goes, because I've been the one just kind of doing it, myself and Danielle, she does an amazing job she had been taking that off my hands, but again, even her, one of our full-time volunteers that has another full-time job as a teacher, there's only so much time she can have to keep up with all that as well. But we finally have somebody else that just came on that's really been a go-getter, that's starting to really nail down some of this stuff and put together a broader platform with, like you said, options. Because, man, people don't have options of ways they can help. You just give them one. Well, you're not always, going to be able to get any support from everybody then, right?
Right. If you give them the wrong one,
right,
then you just miss that opportunity.
Sometimes even if you just lead with the wrong one, because sorry, we gotta go. But the heart's there in a lot of cases. Again, we've only been around for 2 years as an organization altogether. So it's like, just reflecting on it, I'm like, I'm just amazed that we've gotten this far, this fast, without some of these tools. And that's what makes me so excited to set some of this stuff up, like what we're talking about now, because as we do put them into place, and that support starts to catch up with the work we've done, even, I'm really looking forward to having it, because I can only imagine, if everybody could see what we've done with again, no support, because we've gotten support, but with nothing like you've seen for other organizations that accomplish much less than we've already done.
Right. Well, I think encouraging you to celebrate those wins and leverage all of the great work that you've been doing. And what we have a tendency as as organizational leaders, and I'll throw the entrepreneur hat on the top of that, to move the goal line, right? So we set a goal, and we say we're going to go do this, and then as we approach that goal, we tend to move it out. And and then we approach that and move it out and approach that and move it out. And we never take time to actually look back and see how far we've come. And so, if the goal line was 100 yards away last year, and you've been kicking the ball down the field or running the ball down the field for the last 2 years, and you're like, gosh, that goal line is still out there. Well, you look back and you've gone 450 yards. And so, really taking that time to recognize those wins and then weave those wins into your story. And even though you've kept shoving out your vision, that's a good thing to do. But also making sure that you're capturing those moments and you can use those to great effect.
Right. Yeah, and that's where we've been getting better. TikTok's probably my best place to show our work recently. My account on there finally up to like 95,000 followers now.
What? That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's a huge community.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's pretty good one. It's growing. It's pictures of the animals, videos about veteran related stuff, and we, that's what, that's kind of how we, in some cases, one of our biggest videos has like 500,000 views of, it was, us kind of explaining what a veteran goes through as far as, when they're navigating through the VA, and, really just kind of paints the story of the veteran's perspective.
Right.
And, it was one of the most, God, I don't know how many times, because I just remember my best friend that took his life from PTSD suicide. He, just all his rejection letters from the VA for requests for certain care and everything else. He was just struggling. And again, I'm just like, I'm thinking it was the bureaucracy, he was really just, and yeah, the bureaucracy is a big part of the frustration behind it, but just the rejection behind the whole program, and what he was experiencing when he really, really needed help. I mean, this is just months before his suicide, so it's like, it's we like to kind of not put the stories out there like that, but again, just, kind of show some obvious, anecdotes, if you will, of those experiences, and they're reaching people on a scale that I did not expect. It's a truth lived by so many veterans and so many family members, and there's so many survivors, like people with survivor's guilt, that were all feeling like I felt when I wrote this program.
Right.
That were just like, where did the F did I screw up? It's almost bad language. But where did I screw up and to not being there for my friend, because it's always hindsight once suicide happens. And survivor's guilt is PTSD that's essentially passed on. A lot of people don't know how to cope with that survivor's guilt, and they continue to blame themselves until that person's suicide has become one of the most traumatic events of their life, just by, again, lack of coping skills. So, having outlets, lack of, having coping skills that, that are available to them. They lack the ability to have coping skills. And that's, and again, that's why these videos are important. Awareness is important. And again, we get into the wolf dogs, and you see a lot of the wolf dogs in our videos. Some of them are cheesy and corny, but a lot of them, again, they'll show the work. I mean, it's you should see the one of all the trash and the before and after pictures of certain areas that we cleaned up on the Sedalia property.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, you said it early on that being vulnerable and leading with authenticity and being able to share those moments and feel like you're in a secure, supportive space is really what your program is all about. And so, with almost 100,000 followers on TikTok, I would say, leverage.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get each of those people to give you $7, which isn't a ton of money for most people, you'd be at your goal.
Yeah.
Man, I just really love what you're doing. I think you're doing a really great job. It's amazing to hear that you bootstrapped this. I can't believe it's been an hour. I've had a really great time talking with you today. How did this land with you? What are your takeaways?
Again, there's it sounds like you're really knowledgeable about some different approaches that we've been looking at getting into, and again, it just, a lot of it feels like the right time too. My takeaways are that we've got to keep doing what we're doing, but we also need to raise what we need to raise to do it. So it's just more outreach, more spread and love, and more trying to get people help that need it for me. So
that's great. And how do people find out more information about you, or donate time or money or resources?
They can head to our website, mattersvillevets.org. If they're looking for some entertainment to see what we're about, you can check out TikTok, Pack 22 Alpha. And there's also our Facebook page, which we put our calendar of events and different things on pretty regularly, which is just Mattersville on Facebook. And Instagram as well, Mattersville Vet.
Awesome. So I also love to, and I'm trying to write and talk at the same time here. That's just not working great for me. I really like to end these with an action. I think that there's so much talk, and talk is great, and getting ideas out there is the first step, but taking action is the next step. If you had to tell or ask people to do one thing after listening to the show, what would that thing be?
It would be to really look at the people in your life, whether you think they're happy or sad, the people that are counting on you and counting on you to check on them, to really, really take a look at them and make sure that their mental health is okay. People can fool you, and a lot of people are really good at hiding their pain. And, so sometimes it's not so much just asking them, but really just, kind of looking at them and feeling out whether they might need help, because, sometimes it's hard for people. And when people are asking for help, be receptive to it. It's really hard for some people to ask help. So, when somebody is, take it seriously, because that might be you might be their last lifeline. You might be the one that they were reaching out to. So just keep an open mind to them and be there. And if they need help that's beyond your profession, call a crisis support line and get them some help.
I think that's a really great action, a really great sentiment. I think we can all take a little bit more time to be present and be aware and just love each other. So I really love that you ask people to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's I could tell everybody from personal experience that I'm looking back in hindsight and saying that I should have done a lot more is a lot harder than just taking a few extra minutes to check on your loved one.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today, and I would encourage everyone to go check out mattersvillevets.org. And thanks so much for being on the show, Drew.
Yeah, thanks, too. I appreciate it. And hopefully you can make it out sometime and see everything for yourself.
Oh, I would love to. I'll take you up on that.
All right, well, let's get a plan then.
All right. Have a great day, Drew.
Right, thanks, too.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Relish This. I have some exciting news. At long last, my first book, Mission Uncomfortable, is complete. This is a culmination of years of exploration around purpose-driven marketing and the audience engagement cycle, and it's packed with insights and information to help your organization survive and thrive. We'll be releasing this to the public in late February, so stay tuned for more on how you can get your copy. That's it this week. I'll be back next week for another great episode of Relish This.